Chapter 5, Divine Nutrition. It was only several days later that I remembered I wanted to find out from Anastasia the recipe for the therapeutic tea, as well as the overall method of correct nutrition or diuretics for my readers. It's a good thing I remembered. It seems that Anastasia knew about an unusual, I might say unique, method of nutrition, which can be applied even to city living conditions. To my surprise, instead of giving me the tea recipe right off, Anastasia began talking about man's capabilities, about patients and healers. We had spoken on this on several other occasions, but what she had to tell me this time was indeed interesting. Reality, Vladimir, must be defined only through one's self. Every man living on the earth today is capable of seeing into the lives of people thousands of years ago, of looking into the future, and of creating his own future. All have this tremendous ability within themselves. It just needs to be understood. Once it is understood, then nobody can lead them away from the truth. People will come into harmony with each other, and endless warfare will cease. A lot of efforts have been made to distort past reality. The possibility of distortion arises when man abandons his own reasoning powers and forms constructs of the past based on somebody else's words and conclusions. It's not entirely clear to me, Anastasia, how every man on Earth can arrive at a knowledge of people living in centuries past, let alone millennia. There is a whole science, too, exclusively devoted to studying the history of mankind. But even today, scholars argue over man's origins and purpose. Historical events are interpreted in different ways. In different ways. Does that mean there are correct and incorrect interpretations? Or perhaps there is some distortion in the way they all describe the past? As a rule, the distortions are introduced for someone's particular benefit. But when you all by yourself recreate scenes of the past within yourself, you will see the truth. You will determine your purpose and your place in the universe. But how, for example, would I be able to see historical scenes of thousands of years ago all on my own? You can picture them through logical thinking, and even the life of the Vedras civilization will appear to you. And what should I think logically about? About images of people you have seen over the half-century of your life and the changes that have taken place in them. It's still not too clear to me just how I should be thinking. It will become clear if you are not too lazy to think. Come, Vladimir, let us begin together, and you can continue on your own, and every man may recreate scenes of the past in order to integrate the very best parts into his future. All right, then. You be the first to start. I shall begin. Look hard, and if you can, add details. They are important. Today you see a whole lot of hospitals and pharmacies with medicines for thousands of ailments. Yes, that's something everyone can see. What of it? Do you recall that just 30 years ago, there were fewer of them? Yes, of course. And how many were there 200 years ago? A lot fewer. Everybody knows that modern medical science is only a little over 200 years old. You see, your own logic has led you to a conclusion. Not too long ago, there were no hospitals at all. Now think and recall who treated people in cases of illness. Who? You yourself lived in a village and saw how your grandmother gave your father and mother herb teas to drink. In that village, it wasn't just my grandmother who could bring about cures. There were others too. And in every human settlement, there were mostly certain people who gathered and preserved therapeutic herbs, and every man could obtain help right away, whether he came down with a minor ailment or even a serious disease, and payment for help was a pittance. Often as just a simple thank you sufficed. Well, sure, they were neighbors after all, and there were plenty of herbs to be found all around. Yes, there were many, very many useful herbs, and many people were aware of the properties of these herbs. Of course they were. I myself knew about some of them, but now I've forgotten. You see, you have forgotten. Many people have forgotten. What does a man do today if he gets a scratch or a cut? He goes to a pharmacy, buys a bandage or a Band-Aid, and sticks it on the wound. He spends time getting to the pharmacy and spends money when he is there. By contrast, in the past, every child knew that if you apply a plantain leaf directly to a wound, the wound will quickly heal and there will be no infection. I know that too, but today in many places the herbs are contaminated. All around you find noxious fumes from cars and dust and acid rain. Yes, you are right, but that is not the point. When we talk about images of the past, you could draw the conclusion that man's knowledge of curing people in the past was superior to that of people today. It would seem that way. I hear a note of doubt or uncertainty in your voice, Vladimir. In that case, the image will not appear before you. You must be absolutely certain in the force of your confidence, or in your rejection, continue to pursue the course of logic. You see, Anastasia, all logic, too, tells me that man's knowledge in the area of folk medicine in the past was significantly greater than that possessed by people today. One might even say immeasurably greater. It follows that the services effected on the basis of this knowledge were significantly more perfected than today. But somehow, it's challenging to suddenly find that all of our modern hospitals, pharmacies, and medical institutions are completely superfluous. It simply boggles the mind. When someone in the Vedras civilization, our ancestor, came down with an ailment, he would eat an herb or drink a tea and the ailment was gone. But when someone in our civilization takes ill, he goes to the hospital, pays a fee to be seen by a doctor. The doctor prescribes some kind of pill or shot, and the patient has to pay again for the drugs, often quite dearly so. And then in lots of cases, the drugs turn out to be counterfeit. Officials from the Ministry of Health say that up to 30% of the drugs sold at our pharmacies are counterfeit. And then a whole bunch of terrible new diseases keep popping up, as though someone deliberately erased the perfect knowledge we once had and replaced it with something less efficient or even illusory. Moreover, official medicine still today treats folk healers with a fair degree of skepticism, probably because it sees them as competition. But why do not the state and society realize that for hundreds of thousands of years, mankind has efficiently healed itself through folk medicine, accumulating a huge amount of experience over this time, and hence this deserves to be developed and studied, and in the final analysis, to be taught in the schools? But that would mean all the businesses involved in modern medicine would collapse. Incredible, simply incredible, Anastasia. I think I'm beginning to understand. Modern medicine is not as much about curing people as about running a business. And if it's business we're talking about, that means that all the companies making pills find it much more profitable when people are ill. The more sick people there are, the more income will kick in for the drug companies. By the laws of business, in such a situation, the number of sick people will quickly begin to steadily increase. It's a vicious circle. I'm becoming more and more convinced that healthcare in the distant past was much more rational and effective than today. Only there are a few historical facts that are standing in the way of a final conclusion. What kind of facts, Vladimir? Well, for instance, history has recorded epidemic outbreaks of plagues, smallpox, and leprosy. Some historical textbooks say that whole settlements died out. Did that really happen? Yes, it did. But now, through the help of modern medicine, the plagues have been beaten along with cholera and smallpox. For example, they inoculate everyone against smallpox, and that's the end of it. That means the folk healers of the past were defeated by these diseases, while modern medicine has succeeded. That is not true, Vladimir. Take a closer look at the time frames and put simple facts together. These epidemic outbreaks you speak of began happening at a time when folk healers were subjected to persecution. Many of them were even put to death. During the occult ages, they were seen as a threat to the authorities. Both then and now, it was believed that pagans worshipped nature and were unspiritual people. This is not true. Pagans respected nature as the creation of God, and they had knowledge of many of the divine creations, which people are ignorant of today. Footnote: for more information on the occult ages, see Book 6, Chapter 8. That's enough, Anastasia. I no longer have any doubts. It's plain that modern medical science is a long ways from the science of folk medicine. I'm convinced of that, but why did you go to such pains to persuade me? It was not just for you. I wanted your readers, too, to be able to understand by comparing facts. But what for? When one fact is proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, other indisputable conclusions will come about. They may seem incredible, but please do not be so easily amazed, Vladimir. What incredible conclusions, for example? First, answer this question. Tell me how people, the majority of people, explain how mankind in ancient times possessed such colossal information about nature. What do you mean how? If you're talking about the prescriptions of folk medicine, it's clear they were passed down from generation to generation. All right, that may be, but I think you will agree that for each of the thousands of prescriptions, there had to be an original author. Well, according to logic, of course, there had to be, but now it is no longer possible to trace the authorship of these prescriptions. It is possible. All the knowledge of the grand creation was imparted by the Creator to each and every one, without exception. This I shall prove to you, Vladimir, and to everybody. Do not be hasty to dismiss what I say as incredible. I'll try not to. Go on. People think that originally man was many times more feeble-minded than today. That is not true, Vladimir. People of pristine origins had divine knowledge right from the beginning. What do you mean right from the beginning, Anastasia? What, did God himself write out prescriptions for a whole bunch of herbal treatments? Historians' descriptions allude to mankind gradually accumulating its knowledge over the centuries. But to pursue the course of logic to its end, that particular allusion would lead to a different conclusion. What kind of conclusion? It would follow from that man is not the perfect creation of God, but the most underdeveloped of all creatures that ever lived on the earth. How does that follow? Think about it. Your dog knows what herbs she needs to eat when she comes down with an ailment, and a cat will know to run to the forest to find herbs she requires. But nobody wrote them a prescription. A bee knows all about extracting nectar from a flower, building a honeycomb and storing honey in it, and gathering pollen, and what raising the next generation is all about. If one link in the chain of knowledge the bee family is endowed with should be removed, the whole family would die out. But bees continue to exist today, and that can only mean one thing. The Creator has given them all the knowledge they need, right from the start, right at the moment of their creation. And that is why bees have not died out, but have lived on for millions of years and are starting to build their unique honeycombs even today, just as in the first moment of their creation. And the ants, too, continue to build their homes. The flowers continue to unfold their petals with the advance of each new dawn, just as on the first day of their creation. The apple, the pear, and cherry trees know exactly what kind of juices they need from the ground to grow their fruit. All information is given to them right at their inception, right at the moment of their creation. Man is no exception. Yeah, incredible. All logic really does lead to that conclusion, and that means, hold on, just where is all this knowledge right now? It is preserved in every single man, and the therapeutic recipe for the healing herb tea is one that every man is free to compile for himself. But how? You see, Vladimir, God gave it to man right from the beginning. It is capable of curing a great many diseases of the flesh and prolonging life. It is extremely simple, and at the same time not so simple. Man should be able to figure it out with his mind. Let us start with some prehistory. In the Vedra civilization, everybody lived to be more than 100 years old, and they knew no diseases of the flesh. They nourished themselves according to God's prescription, not arbitrarily and not haphazardly, but with the greatest thoughtfulness. The Creator specially arranged it so that all the herbs, vegetables, berries, and fruits did not ripen all at once, but one after the other in a strict sequence. One ripened in the early spring, others over the summer, or later in the autumn. Their ripening time was determined by the moment when the specific fruit, vegetable, or herb could offer the greatest benefit to man. A man living on his own domain, feeding himself as God prescribed, could not take ill. The type of food and the time of taking it had been determined for man by God. Man himself decided the quantity of food, but not through reason. He ate as much as he liked, and his body could accurately determine down to the gram the required quantity of food. In the autumn, each family put up stores for the winter: berries, root vegetables, herbs, nuts, and mushrooms. Over the winter, in every household, a plate stood on the table with little piles of produce from the summer harvest. All of the members of the family were involved in their own activities, but whenever they felt hungry or thirsty, they would go over to the table and take whatever they needed without thinking about it. Note, Vladimir, they took what they needed without thinking. Their bodies knew exactly what kind of food was needed and in what quantity. Everyone had been endowed with this ability by God. This ability can be revived now. All that is needed is information. I have adapted the Vedras method of nutrition for people of today. Try it yourself and encourage others to try it. It goes as follows. A man living in a modern apartment needs to acquire a small quantity, 100 to 200 grams each, of all the vegetables, fruits, and edible herbs growing in the region where he lives. Before using any of this produce, he should go a whole day without eating, drinking only spring water, and having a glass of red beet juice for lunch. After drinking the beet juice, it is better not to leave his home. The stomach and bowels will start undergoing an intensive cleansing process. Upon awakening the following morning and feeling hungry, he should be able to take any vegetable, herb, or a piece of fruit and put it on a small plate. After sitting down at the table, he should carefully observe what is lying there on the plate. Sniff it, lick it, and then eat it with an unhurried chewing. It is best to be alone in the room during this time, isolated from the sounds of the artificial world. The feeling of hunger may not disappear after eating a single piece of food, or it may reappear after a short period of time. In that case, he should select a second piece and eat it in the same manner as the first. Man should take all the produce he has obtained and sample them in any sequence at short intervals. The time for sampling any particular food is determined by the sensation of hunger. The taking of food should definitely begin in the morning. By the end of this day, a man should have sampled all the locally grown produce. If there is a large variety available and one day is insufficient, the sampling can extend to the following day. This procedure is extremely important. It will give many people's bodies, perhaps for the first time in their lives, a chance to become acquainted with the taste qualities and properties of the local produce, and to determine how needful it is to man at any given moment and in what quantity. Once the body has become familiar with all the produce, one should cut each vegetable into small pieces and lay them out on a large plate. Small clumps of greens and berries should also be put out, either alongside or on another plate. Any produce that will spoil quickly on the plate should be immersed in spring water. Also on the table, one should put honey, flower pollen, cedar nut oil, and spring water. Man may go about his own daily affairs, but when he feels hungry, he can go over to the table and pick up an item he likes, either with his hands or with a wooden spoon, and eat it. It is possible some of the food may be eaten up completely, while the rest may be left untouched. This means that your own personal wise physician and nutritionist, your body, which was given to you by the Creator, selected for you what you needed at that moment, while what you did not need was left untouched. The uneaten produce need not be put again on the table the following day, but after 3 days, a complete variety should once again be displayed. It is possible that one's body will need something different by then. In time, man will be able to determine which items can be temporarily excluded from his diet so as to not waste his efforts in obtaining them. But it is possible that after a period of time, his body will indeed have need of them again, and so from time to time one should lay out on the table as wide a variety as possible. I know that the people living in your world often need to be away from their dwellings, but even here one can adapt. For example, one can make or acquire a small birch bark container into which to put a portion of the food from the table. One's body will choose what is most required. In case of an extended trip, one's body needs to become familiar with the produce available in a new territory, since, in spite of identical names, there may be significant taste differences. In this method of nutrition, Vladimir, it is important to grasp one essential point. It is not only the animals that are able to determine which kinds of food will be most beneficial to their bodies at any given moment and in what quantity. This knowledge is present, too, within every single man. Our son thought up everything correctly. To prepare the healing tea for you from the taiga herbs, he decided to observe a sable. But if you yourself knew the taste of every herb, your body would be able to determine and select the herbs you need far more accurately than the sable. When you get back to your apartment, allow your body to get to know the taste of all easily available produce. Do not mix the food together and do not add salt. Otherwise, your body will not be able to determine the value and significance of the produce. This method by which man can compile his own dietary regime or recipe for healthful nutrition seemed to me to be the most original and logical. The body's needs in terms of quantity and variety of produce will naturally differ from one individual to the next. Consequently, there cannot be a single recipe or dietary regime, which is the same for all. But through the aid of the method proposed by Anastasia, every man can make up his own individual regime, which will be as accurate and useful as possible for him. It appears as though man-made recipes and prescriptions are not always beneficial to one's health. Instead, they tend to be technology-based and more convenient for the manufacturers and organizers of our modern nutrition industry. Take McDonald's, for example, one of the most powerful and influential corporations known around the globe, inculcating in the whole world a taste for uniform hamburgers and cheeseburgers, along with packages of fried potatoes, roping in everybody under a single unitary norm. Such a system undoubtedly works very well to the manufacturer's advantage: uniform products, uniform equipment, and preparation technology. How far removed such uniformity is from the natural method of nutrition, and how harmful. More and more people all over the planet are becoming aware of this. Wednesday, October 16th in 2002, the UN's World Food Day became the annual official day of protest against McDonald's, a protest against the promotion of junk products under the guise of food, the use of aggressive child-oriented advertising campaigns, and the cruel exploitation of workers, unethical treatment of animals, destruction of the environment, and the world dominance of large corporations over our lives. Footnote: World Food Day, also known as World Nutrition Day, established in 1979 by the member countries of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, to raise awareness of world poverty and hunger, and to commemorate the founding of the FAO on the 16th of October in 1945 in the city of Quebec. A specific theme is selected for each year's celebration. The worldwide anti-McDonald's protest is an independent movement which chose their annual protest day to coincide with World Food Day. According to their literature, the worldwide anti-McDonald's Day has been marked since 1985. More and more, McDonald's is being held up by worldwide circles of protesters as a symbol of contemporary capitalism. One after another, all across the globe, lawsuits are being brought against American corporations dealing in junk food. McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, and Wendy's, on behalf of millions of consumers led astray by a systematic and unethical promotion of harmful food products. These people have consequently suffered from obesity, heart ailments, and a variety of other serious health problems. Concern over this health threat is growing everywhere in Europe and in the USA, exacerbated by mad cow disease and the use of genetically modified feed, as well as direct consumption of genetically modified produce, for example, potatoes and corn, and their traces in other products, chocolate, pastry, etc. But is it only our nutritional system that is constructed with somebody's particular profit motive in mind? What about our contemporary governmental institutions? Take, for example, our modern democratic society. How ideally suited is it to human life? I was most interested to hear what Anastasia would have to say about this. Tell me, Anastasia, if someone could construct a nutritional system for their own advantage at the expense of millions of people, I wonder whether our social order might have been deliberately set up with a similar motive. Indeed, it has. Think about it, Vladimir. Ages pass, and the names of your social structures change. But their raison d'etre, I don't know how to pronounce that, R-A-I-S-O-N, D apostrophe, E with a squiggly over it, T-R-E. Their, my best guess is reason for being, remains the same: the exploitation of people. Well, it hasn't always been the same. For example, we used to have slavery. Now we have democracy. I think under democracy there is far less exploitation than we had when we had slavery. Vladimir, would you like me to show you a scene from the past and tell you a parable? I would. Then look and see.